Now, here's a question for you. If you had to listen to this day in, day out, it is, of course, the sound of a wind turbine. Do you think there is the potential that it could make you sick? Now, this has been the subject of years of debate. And the latest study, reported in the Australian today, is making a fairly bold claim that it has found the first real evidence that people who can hear the low-frequency noise generated by turbines are at greater risk of suffering health problems. We're going to get a couple of takes on this morning. The research was carried out in southwest Victoria and was actually funded by the wind farm operator Pacific Hydro. So that in itself is interesting. Stephen Cooper was the lead researcher. He's the principal of the Acoustics Group. Welcome to the program, Stephen.
Thank you.
Lots of people, I'm sure, are very interested to talk to you today. Can you tell me about the study? What were you tracking?
The scope of the work was to look at complaints from residents and to determine if there are any wind speeds or sound levels that related to those complaints. It was not a health study. It was simply looking to start from a new perspective, being the complaint end of an investigation.
Can you tell us what people were complaining about?
They're complaining a whole range of symptoms, and it does in some cases called the wind turbine syndrome, and it involves primarily feeling pressure in different parts of the body, being at the chest, the throat, the head, headaches, sometimes nausea, awakened in a startling state, and it's not easily defined by concepts of noise or vibration. And so I found that people were describing things as feelings. So I introduced the concept of sensation into the survey, and sensation covered all of those things, and it gave a way for the residents to express what they were perceiving.
Okay. Tell us what you did.
I created a diary format where the residents would report on a regular basis their sensitivity, where 1 was not a problem and 5 was, I've got to get out of here, on noise, separately to vibration, separately to sensation. And I had a specific pilot study of 6 people, 3 houses, that varied from 650 metres to 1,600 metres from the nearest turbine. The study ran for 8 weeks, and we were conducting measurements externally and internally in terms of noise. And at one house which was abandoned, we had a multitude of microphones in different rooms and outside. And included during that period, there was some 2 weeks where the turbines would shut down in the morning for work on a substation where they were doing high voltage cabling work. So we got on-off and over a repeated pattern, as well as 6 weeks of monitoring under different weather conditions, wind strength, etc.
My guest is Stephen Cooper, the principal of the Acoustics Group, who's speaking to us from Canada, and we're looking at some research Stephen conducted into small communities in southwest Victoria who have had ongoing concerns about the potential health impacts of a wind farm nearby. And interesting, the research was funded by the operator of that wind farm, Pacific Hydro. So what were you able to reveal, Stephen?
I was looking for patterns in the data, and I found that there were different operating conditions of the wind farm where there were higher levels of sensitivity, and I found 4 distinct phases: when they were trying to start, that is the turbines trying to start, when the turbines were above their maximum operating power and they were sort of downloading or unloading the blades, and a scenario where the wind power output increased by 20% or more, and the fourth scenario when it decreased by 20% or more. And I took this to be an instability across the blades because they adjust the blades to line up with the wind, but when it's not stable, they can't do this. And it was plotting the sensations that the residents reported and the noise and the vibration simultaneously versus noise levels, normally a dBA, and also the power output of the wind farm with the wind speed and wind direction. And I was looking for patterns that were giving me these signs, and because I had full access to the wind data from the wind farm and all the turbine outputs, we were able to narrow in onto these scenarios.
Okay, so there were certain times when people were feeling most keenly the acoustic impact of the wind farm?
Well, they covered noise separately to vibration versus sensation.
Yes.
But in the end, the majority of the observations related to sensation.
Okay. So what were they feeling at these times? Can you explain what they noticed and you were noticing at the time?
Well, I wasn't there all the time. We had remote equipment. We simply went on the scaling that they gave. They had a separate page in their diary that would describe what was going on, and that's to remain confidential.
Okay.
It was purely on their allocation of sensation, and these people had been experiencing it for a long while. And in the early stages, they were only reporting changes, and they didn't realise that they weren't reporting what was constant because it had gone to the back of their mind, so to speak.
Are you able to draw any kind of conclusion that says the operation of that wind farm in all its different stages contributes to illness or sensation among people who live nearby?
I can talk about sensation of people nearby, yes. We went through and we found measurements in the infrasound region, that is below the threshold of hearing, and in both frequencies. For example, if you have the spectrum of light, infrared you know exists, but you can't see it. And so this sound called infrasound is below the low frequencies, and it exists, but it's at levels that you can't hear. So I found a relationship or a trend between the sensations and the patterns of infrasound developed by a wind turbine. I'm not qualified in any way, shape or form to enter into the illness side.
Okay. How valuable then do you think this data is in a discussion that has been going on for years, has been based largely on anecdote, some science, and I guess a great deal of scepticism?
By using this study and using the tool to prove by the shutdowns that the turbines generate this discrete pattern of signature that's there, and there's no doubt about it, we now have a tool that can be used to do the medical studies to continue. So this is the stepping stone that allows us to move forward and get to those discrete answers, because we have a mechanism, whereas the normal indices that they use for noise just doesn't work. All you end up doing is